Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. We would love for you to put where you are in the world in the chat. It's always fun to see all the international guests that we have. Today is a very special show because this is my 100th LinkedIn Live show. And it also happens to be the week of Rebecca Del Secco, who's my partner in crime, happens to be her 6-year anniversary. So thank you, Rebecca, for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited. I think the first LinkedIn Live we ever did was you and I. So
that's right. Yeah. You were my first and my 100th. And then you'll be on my 1,000th.
I love it.
Yeah, I tested it out and we had a chat and I loved it. So, we've got someone here from Denmark. Love that. Thank you for posting. So, we were just going to talk today about Civility Partners and some of our lessons learned, and this will be a fun, interesting show for us. So, before we jump into all of that, just a little history on Civility Partners. It's actually our 15th year anniversary next year. So we're at 14 years. So that lots of things to celebrate. And if you don't know, I started Civility Partners 14 years ago, right out of graduate school. I was working for a company where there was a toxic person, and I was so frustrated, but also sort of interested in why he acted that way and why we all allowed it, that it became my life's mission. So that was how Civility Partners was born. So Rebecca, all these years, 6 years, can you share maybe a favorite client of yours that we've had along the way, or some of the favorite work that you've done with some of our clients along the way, and why?
Well, I think one that comes to mind is we worked with a client who was across the U.S. They had a lot of different locations, and they really wanted to do training. And I think a lot of the times when people reach out to us for training, it's we just want to do this and that's it. And I remember working pretty heavily with this client. They were super involved in the content. They wanted to have a team reviewing it, and they really wanted to make sure that they were sending the right message to their employees. And I really loved how engaged their leadership team was in, creating this more transformative process and experience for their team. And we actually have continued to work with them for quite some time. And I just remember really loving that, because I think sometimes, every organization is different, but I so enjoy working with the clients and contacts that are looking for transformation, because that's really what culture change is it's it's not just one training, it's a process, and everyone has to be engaged. So I think in terms of my favorite clients, it's those ones, the ones that really see a long-term transformation for their employees and organization and themselves as well.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. I was thinking this morning of some of my favorite clients, and one of them I think was before your time, but it was they manufactured executive jets, this company, and the senior HR business partner who reported directly to the CEO. We actually team trained. So we traveled around the United States together, going to all of the different hangars where they repaired these things and to the manufacturing plants, delivering training. And she was right there to comment when people had questions. And, some of these guys who'd been in this manufacturing of jet industry for 25 years, definitely would raise their hand. Why do we even need to do this? It's just always been this way, and she would really just make it very clear that she did not care if it had always been that way. Today was the day it was not going to be that way anymore. So, I think we've had clients where they kind of want us to work some magic without really being involved, and that doesn't work as we know. So that's the lesson learned for our listeners. If you're going to hire a consultant and or a trainer, understand that you have a big role in that as well, because we can only impart knowledge. It's up to the organization to hold people accountable.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think another piece of that is making sure that employees feel heard along the way. I think oftentimes there's this perspective that culture comes from the top down. And while there is a piece of that that is true, and that leadership really has to exemplify and behave in a ways that support the culture that they want, but culture comes from every single person in the organization. And so, I call myself the discovery queen over here. I do a lot of interviews and getting to know people in organizations and their experience. And there is this powerful piece of just hearing your employees and giving, even just simply giving them the platform. And so that's been one of the most rewarding pieces of my job is listening to people and hearing their experiences and giving them the chance to be candid and honest. And I'd say that the organizations that can really take that feedback in are the ones that are the most successful. And that's not to say that you have to, do every single thing that employees request. But if you simply give them the platform, and then show that you've listened or even acknowledge that you want to hear them, there's so much that you can glean from the people who are on the front lines.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks for pointing that out, that a lot of times people just really want to be heard. And so you kind of end up being a therapist because they get to vent to you. And then hopefully we are able to relay all of that to the leaders and get their buy-in to make change. That's a great point. I'm for anybody listening in, definitely would love questions from you. We're culture change experts, and happy to answer questions along the way too about anything. We often go into really toxic work environments where morale and trust in leadership and relationships are just all really broken, and we get to go in there and fix it. And it's a lot of work, isn't it, Rebecca? But it's rewarding.
Hey, what are you talking about?
One thing I love about Civility Partners is our ability to really focus on self-care. I think we recognize how draining some of this stuff can be. And I feel like our team very much takes care of each other, and we push back on each other and hand things off. And always been in awe when anything's going on and someone says, I just don't have time to do this, or I can't do it, or it's too far out of my comfort zone. I don't have the time to learn it right now. That we tend to really pass work around pretty easily. And that's a pretty neat thing to see inside our company.
Yeah, definitely. I think, I've been here 6 years and I've really enjoyed, I always say I've had my fingers in all the pies, so to speak, because there is always that opportunity to jump in and try new things. And I think that that's a part of the culture that we've created as well here at Civility Partners, is that if someone is saying, I don't feel I have time, or someone can be honest about their bandwidth, another person also has that ability to sit in being uncomfortable and say, well, I'll try it. Let's see if I can help you out with that. Or, there's really a big collaborative environment here. And it makes it also easy for us to execute our other core value, which is learn a lot. We learn a lot throughout the process. And so I've been very fortunate, 6 years, and it feels like it's flown by. And in some ways I feel like a whole new person than I was many, many moons ago, I'll say.
You are. It's been fun to watch you grow over the last 6 years. And I know I've grown a lot too. What is one of your favorite success stories from a client? Something where you saw Civility Partners really make an impact?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I feel like there's a few on the top, like the tip of my tongue. I'll say that in terms of the ones that come to mind, and I'm probably going to steal yours, ones that come to your mind, is the coaching clients that we work with. I think, so for our coaching program, we do a first round of kind of 360 interviews, which I conduct as the discovery queen, of course. And then Catherine works her magic in coaching, and then I get to do the second round of interviews. And it's just so rewarding to have talked to these people that were really struggling in these first round of interviews. I mean, I've had people cry. I've had people talk to me for an hour and a half and just, I let them go. And it's so amazing to see, 3 to 4 months later, which it really isn't that much time, to see have people actually specifically say, like, I feel my quality of life is better now that this person has improved their behavior, or I've just seen a complete 180, or so those moments where you can see the impact on an individual level, I can see 10 people who I've interviewed really shift. And I mean, you can even hear it on the call in their disposition. And it's that, for me, as the person who's doing the discovery, is so impactful, that individual little seeds that are planted along the way.
I love that. Yes, coaching is definitely very satisfying, gratifying, and it's for us. It's not 5 years later something's different. We've been able to really make a big impact. I would say too, one of my favorite local clients, and you'd probably agree, is our friend Rainbow, and they're on our website as a case study, so I feel comfortable sharing them. But we were able to really show an increase in the positive survey scores, even to a point where our second survey, after we'd been working with them for a while, 100% of the employees said they were happy to come to work. And so that's pretty phenomenal. And it wasn't super bad the first time. I think it was something like 79% of people, but to get to 100%, literally having a positive response to a statement around wanting to be at work and being their best. And that I think the question was that the organization inspires them to be their best every day, and 100% of people positively responded. So those are also fun to just be like, in the bag, we helped that company. And we've worked with them off and on. They've been a real partner. So that's fun. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, it's really amazing when we're given the opportunity to collect data from the beginning. And then, I think with Rainbow, we had actually done a couple of surveys. So, again, I love discovery. I love data. And so when I get to see those percentages and the needle move, it's really, really awesome, even though and I think that, Catherine, you and I probably both saw, just in terms of how people were acting at work when we were there, was shifting. But it's a whole nother level when you get to the survey and see, oh my gosh, 100% of people, that's amazing. And again, that also comes from the organization and their commitment as well, and partnering with us.
Yeah, we're back to that it was a real partnership. We certainly cannot take responsibility or say that was due to us. It had a lot to do with Carlene and the company that she's in, and Carlene at Rainbow. So that's, I guess, a big lesson learned. Don't make it harder on your consultant or trainer. If you're hiring someone, they need the buy-in and the resources from the CEO and from HR, which is who we partner with. Tell me, Rebecca, what's one lesson learned from our clients that you've seen in the last 6 years? And it could be, from a client that we weren't able to help them make change because we weren't able to get through to the leaders, or what's a good lesson learned?
Yeah, I think the one thing that comes to mind is that because our typical client that we go in is more struggling, they're struggling with their culture. There's some toxic behavior happening. And I think that the people, and I said this a little bit before, the organizations that have been the most successful from my perspective, are those that can really sit in the data that we gather. Because I find a lot of times people are very, we want to hear from employees. We want to hear from them. And then when they get the feedback, and naturally it can hurt. It can be emotional to be a leader in an organization and to get a lot of negative feedback. And really the key is how that leadership responds. And so that was really a lesson learned, I think, pretty quickly. When we work with clients, you can kind of tell who's, after you provide that data, that switch of, okay, I've heard this, Now we need to figure out what to do. As opposed to, I think, and again, it can be really natural. You're a leader in an organization that's struggling to make change, and some of it can be feel very personal, and it's really what you do with that that makes a big difference.
Yeah, I would echo that as well. We've definitely had some leaders who were very personally offended by the survey data. And so we've learned that the hard way. HR out there, if you're talking your CEO into a survey, it's great to get the budget for it, but also having some conversations with them to mentally prepare them for the feedback. And it's not about them. It's about, here's what people think and let's make a change. And that's, I think, something that we do really well as well, is we help the CEO figure out how to craft some messaging around the survey data. We want them to own it, but we also want them to share, here's what I'm going to do with that data. Not to worry, it's not a survey that you took and nothing's going to come of it. So really, when you're doing surveys, for anybody out there listening, to make sure that not only don't just think about the survey, you have to make time and room for what happens after, and you have to make sure the CEO is ready and willing to communicate about the data and what they intend to do about it. We have a couple comments. Oh, go ahead, Rebecca.
I'll just add that I think it can be sometimes for employees, and I guess for anyone, their perception is their reality. And so sometimes it can just be, the employees are feeling this way, and the response can be, well, that's not really true. That's not what's happening. But at the end of the day, their perception is how they're experiencing the work environment. And that's a really key thing to remember when you're looking at survey feedback.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, we get some, especially with coaching, get the arguments around, well, that didn't happen. That's not, and it's, culture in a way is fluffy. It is made up of people's perceptions. And, but then you have a good consulting firm like Civility Partners who helps you turn that fluff into something tangible and something you can make change on. Our very dear friend, Jules, who's one of our cheerleaders and also our fantastic fractional CMO, and also the amazing person who designed our website. Hi, Jules. She's asking, what are some of my favorite interview guests or topics over the years since I've been on Catherine's Corner? I'm happy to answer that. It's a great question. I would say one that sticks out to me is a nonprofit that helps place people with disabilities into organizations. And I thought about them this morning and thought I should go dig out that company's name, and shame on me. I'll make sure it gets in the comments for listeners later. But recognizing that there are a lot of things we do that keep people with disabilities out of the job market, not on purpose. We maybe list things on postings on Indeed or LinkedIn, and maybe you have somebody who can't view that. That doesn't mean they're not a good fit for your organization. So just lots of lessons learned along the way with a lot of my guests around opening your mind to what other people need and being willing to take those few extra steps to get them what they need so they can join your organization. And Jules, just to highlight you, since you asked the question, you were one of my favorite guests. You fit right in there. You're somebody who runs a business focused on equity and inclusion, and you are super knowledgeable about that world and what people need and how to be inclusive. So I love the tangible action items that come out of a lot of these Catherine's Corners. So thank you for asking. What else, Rebecca? What's one of your favorite things about being at Civility Partners?
Well,
besides me,
you're my boss, I feel like I have to say you, but I'm just kidding. I think that one of the things that we really preach to clients that we practice internally is really living core values. I think that, and as someone who also helped create the core values 5 or 6 years ago, they really come from my heart. But I think that in terms of working here, it's really great to have those core values really mean something and how we function. Like, Catherine, you said earlier, the take care of you core value. We added that for a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, we had realized that all of our core values were about working hard and pushing through. And COVID had hit. We were all working remotely, and I remember saying, "Gosh, we don't have anything in here that says, make sure that we're taking care of ourselves and work-life balance." And so we had added that one in recently, and I think that we really, really live that here. And the best part, as we brought in employees and we've collaborated with people all over, is that we are really encouraged to be our authentic selves at work. And it's something I value very much. And I think it's so important. And one of the reasons why I feel so at home here, I always say Civility Partners is like my second home. I called my office my room the other day.
I was just going to say that you've had to slip a few times and said your room instead of your office. I love it. I love it. I think we should just all start saying that in the office. No more. We're not using the word office anymore. We're going to start saying room.
Second to my room. We're going to have like a pull-out bed or something here at some point.
I that's a good lesson learned around core values too, for anybody listening, is that we were already taking care of ourselves. And that was a core value, even though it hadn't been identified. And then, it was you who really said, look, that's not in here. We should do it, just to call it out. But there's been times where you were stressed out about something outside of work, and I told you to go home. I've certainly been stressed out outside of work and said, I'm not coming in. And as the CEO, I really feel like there's no way in heck I'm going to work 10 hours a day, all day, every day. And I certainly don't expect anybody else to do that. So if I want to be human at work, I got to make room for everybody else to be human at work. And I think it really has served us, where you can't be productive if you're stressed out about something happening, you're moving or having an argument with your partner, whatever. And so, I don't know. I think it's a good lesson learned around the fact that core values can and should evolve. They're not, sometimes we get clients who are like, well, the board of directors made those 15 years ago, and it's going to be hard to talk them into changing it. It's like, why? Because they're words on a website, unless they're already really ingrained in your organization, then who cares? That's kind of like, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it really ignores the fact that the workforce changes. So you have a company, maybe they've been in business 100 years, but the workforce, and we've seen it shifts every generation. There's different needs in the organization. Employees are looking for different things from their employers, from their leaders. And so it's only, I think, natural for core values to shift as priorities shift and the world changes. And now we've gone remote and hybrid, and that was a shock to everyone. But I think that core values are probably meant to evolve over time, and should.
100%, because your core values are meant to dictate behavior inside your organization from the employees. And so if people are evolving, like you said, and my doggy, the generations are evolving, that we absolutely need to evolve the core values, because how people behave now is different than they did 10 years ago and even 5 years ago, and that will continue to happen. So I think that's the other reason organizations get stuck on their core values. They see them as just this like glorified thing that's on the wall, and they forget that really and truly you can turn your core values into kind of the rules of engagement when people are at work and how you're supposed to interact. So if people see core values that way, then they'll change them, right?
Yeah, exactly. That prompted a question, and as I do, I'm gonna turn this around on you and ask you a question.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, where have you seen a shift in culture? I mean, you've been doing this for 14, almost 15 years. I've been by your side for 6, so of course I have my own thoughts. But what kinds of shifts have you seen in organizations around companies over the last?
There must be somebody outside, because working from home today. One of our core values is be authentic. That's a great one. And I think, thanks, Dale. He says he loves our comments. that's a good question. We see culture change in these short stints, right? Where we've done a survey, we've worked with the company for a year, 18 months, and then we've done another survey, and we could see in the survey culture's changed. And then our hope is that it will continue to change once we've left. We have other clients like Rainbow and some of our others that keep coming back. And so then we get to really live that. I just did training at Rainbow the other day, and it was like, hi, everybody, I'm back. And to feel the vibe in the room, it was very different than the first time I was there. And so I wish I could say that all of our clients stayed with us so long and that we got to be involved so much that we could really feel it. But I'll say them too. UC Berkeley, they're also on our website. So I feel okay sharing that they were a client that, we did make some big difference. And what's interesting about that client is you wouldn't know it in terms of people were still very angry about what had happened there before we got there, and people were still upset. But we also saw that the workplace became a lot better for women, and it became a lot better for the Black workforce. And so, they still have a ton of work to do, and I'm sure still have much more these few years later. But to be able to look at the data and say, wow, women felt like they were being bullied weekly before we got there, and we eliminated that. That's culture change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it can be a challenge when we only get to go in and do one piece because, we think so big and we think here's everything we want to do. And there's a big initiative. And, when you had asked me at the beginning what my favorite client was, one of my favorite clients, I was thinking a real theme that popped up in the clients that came to mind were the ones where we really got to do a long-term program and see that shift over time. And I think that can be so rewarding. And again, culture change takes time. So it's really fun and cool when we get to be there along the way, as opposed to, and eventually we have to go. We can't stay forever. As much as
I know.
I know, right? Can't be honorary employees, but
we can, but then we'd want to be paid for that. And they, I agree. It sounds like, I guess we're coming to the conclusion. I think we already knew this. We love clients that let us really partner with them and have, a CEO who's willing to go into the ugly corners of their organization and make change, and also look at themselves. Because I would say culture doesn't start at the top necessarily. I kind of disagree with that. I think culture, we're all responsible for culture. But on the flip side, we've certainly seen examples of culture starting at the top and how it infiltrates the entire organization. A recent client where the CEO was rough around the edges, shall we say, and very focused on KPIs. And so the relationship stuff was just totally disregarded. And so he's going to build a company where relationships among the team is disregarded. And that's unfortunate. But that's why we don't work with them anymore. All right. Well, thank you so much, Rebecca. It was great to have you on my show, and put in your calendar for the 200th show. And we'll just have you every 100th increment.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It was really a fun experience. I watch the Catherine Corners all the time, and it's fun to be a guest. And so I'll mark my calendar for number 200.
Okay. You can also be my alternate if I'm ever out of the office and can't do it. I like that idea. Yeah. Let's explore that. Learn a lot. All right. Well, thanks everyone. We appreciate you being here, and I'll see you next week. Bye.